Hey WMBC, Luke here with another devotional. Now, this last Sunday, I looked at the idea of testing in the Bible and this promise that God makes that He will help us stand in temptation. We talked a lot about testing, this concept that our word for temptation doesn't capture the full range of what the Bible is talking about there. It's really more of a test that proves our true nature or character. And so it can be a good or a bad thing based on what that test reveals about us. We talked about the idea that our enemy isn't the only one who presents these tests to try to make us fail and sin, but actually God can give us tests with the hopes that we will choose Him. And through these moments of testing and trial and temptation, we actually, God doesn't tempt us, but testing and trial for sure can come from God. And those moments give us opportunities to become more like Him. As we choose to be like Him, the more like Him we become. Now, on Sunday, I talked quite a bit about tests that come from God. I didn't talk a lot about temptations that come from the enemy. And so I wanted to cover that a little bit here. I mean, not too much, but just talk about a few things here. So the first, or I guess the thing I wanted to talk about was that the enemy will question things or try to get us to question things about well, first of all, question things about who we are. So in the desert, when Jesus goes into the wilderness to be tempted by the enemy for 40 days, you'll notice the enemy gives him we're told about three specific temptations there. And the first two are when the enemy says, hey, if you're the Son of God, do this or do that. And so what he's questioning is the identity of Jesus, which was just confirmed. Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, and God said, this is my Son. And the first thing the enemy tempts him on is, hey, are you really God's Son? Like, truly are you? So our enemy is going to question our identity, or try to get us to question our identity, so that we start wondering whether or not we really are beloved children of God, whether we really are saved by Christ, whether we really do have the Spirit in us. Another thing the enemy will do is he'll try to get us to question the world that we live in. So in Genesis 3, when the serpent comes to the woman, he says, did God really say that you can't eat from any tree in the garden? And that's not at all what God said. He said you can eat from any tree but one. And the serpent makes up this claim, and what he's doing there is he's trying to get the woman to question the world she lives in. She's been told by God that this is a plentiful world. She can eat from any tree except one, but there's so much here and there's so much for her to do, and that she lives in a world that is good, where things are being provided for her, where God is a generous Father. And the enemy's question is, are you sure that's the world you live in? Because to me, it seems like you can't eat from every tree. You can't eat from any tree. And not only that, but the God you say is generous. Well, He's keeping something from you. He's not giving you everything that I think you should have. So our enemy will question who we are, and he will question the world around us. And part of that second one, and the third thing he'll try to get us to question is who is God? Right? Is God generous? Is He loving? Our enemy will try to get us to question that fundamental truth that God is love, that God is good, all of these things. And he'll usually try to get us to do that by, look around you, right? There are things you can't explain with the idea that God is good or that God is love. Like, why would God let this happen? Why would that, right? All these questions, which are good questions that we need to wrestle through. But through that course of temptation, the enemy will try to get us to twist our understanding, our internal logic of who we are, the world we live in, and who God is, and what we're supposed to do as a result of that. So, man, I encourage you, as you're tested this week, if the enemy is presenting temptations to you, remember who you are. and remember the truth about who God says you are. Remember the truth about who He is, and remember that the world you're living in is not a totally evil world. It was a good world that God made, and He still has incredible plans for it, and they involve you. And so we can't write it off completely. We've got work to do. We've got work to do. So, I'm praying for you this week. I pray blessing on you as you meet the test, and I pray that God will help you stand in it. And as you do, you will become more and more like Him. God bless.